The rain came down in sheets that evening, turning the asphalt into a mirror of blurred headlights and neon signs. Water pooled in the cracks of the parking lot, reflecting the glow of the grocery store like fractured glass. Most people hurried inside, heads down, shoulders hunched against the cold. But Sarah wasn't in a hurry. She never was anymore. Not because she didn't want to be, but because her body wouldn't let her. She pulled into a spot near the entrance, her worn sedan settling with a quiet sigh. The engine ticked as it cooled. Through the rain-streaked windshield, she watched shoppers rush past, umbrellas blooming like dark flowers. She took a breath, steadied herself, and reached for the cane resting against the passenger seat. Every movement was deliberate. Every step, a negotiation with pain. But she didn't complain. She never did. Inside, the store was warm and humming with life. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere, a child laughed. Sarah moved through the aisles slowly, her cane tapping a steady rhythm on the linoleum. She picked up the essentials: bread, milk, a few canned goods. Nothing fancy. Nothing she couldn't carry. By the time she checked out, the rain had softened to a drizzle, and the sky had deepened to charcoal. But when she stepped back outside, something was wrong. 3 young men stood by her car. Not near it, asterisk against asterisk it. Leaning. Laughing. One had his elbow propped on her hood, phone in hand, scrolling lazily. Another slouched against the driver's door, blocking it entirely. The third stood with his arms crossed, smirking like he owned the place. Their voices carried over the hiss of wet pavement, loud, careless, and dismissive. Sarah stopped a few feet away, bags hanging from one arm, cane planted firmly in her other hand. She didn't speak right away. She just watched. Calm. Composed. Unflinching. The kind of calm that comes from facing worse things than this. Much worse. But they didn't know that yet. The rain had left its mark on her too, dark hair clinging to her temples, jacket damp at the shoulders. She looked small standing there, fragile even. And maybe that's what they saw. Maybe that's why they didn't move. One of them glanced up, noticed her, and grinned. "You waiting for something, lady?" His tone wasn't curious. It was mocking. The others laughed, sharp, careless sounds that cut through the quiet like glass. Sarah's jaw tightened, but her expression didn't change. She shifted her weight slightly, easing the pressure off her injured leg. The cane tapped once against the wet pavement. The sound was small. But in the silence that followed, it felt louder than thunder. She wasn't the woman they thought she was. Sarah had learned patience the hard way. Not in grocery store parking lots or crowded city streets, but in places where patience meant survival. 2 tours overseas. 18 months in combat zones where the air smelled like smoke and sand, where every sunrise was a coin flip, and every night brought the kind of silence that screamed in your ears. She'd been younger then. Stronger. Faster. The kind of soldier who carried her gear without complaint and her squad without hesitation. She'd earned respect the hard way, through sweat, through blood, through decisions no one should ever have to make. And she'd paid for it. A roadside IED had seen to that. The blast had torn through her convoy like a fist through paper, flipping vehicles, scattering lives like leaves. She survived. But her leg didn't. Now, years later, she carried a different kind of weight. Not the weight of a rifle or a rucksack, but the weight of memory. Of loss. Of brothers and sisters who didn't make it home. And every time she limped through a store, every time someone stared a little too long or whispered a little too loud, she felt it all over again. The gap between who she was and who people saw. But she never let it break her. The men in the parking lot had no idea. To them, she was just another woman. Older. Slower. Easier to ignore. One of them was still scrolling through his phone, barely glancing up. Another cracked a joke she couldn't quite hear, and they all laughed again, louder this time, emboldened by her silence. Sarah's grip tightened on her cane. She thought of the comrades she'd lost. The ones who never got the chance to stand in a parking lot on a rainy night, annoyed but alive. And she thought of the ones who came home only to be overlooked, disrespected, forgotten. Not tonight. Excuse me, she said. Her voice was calm. Steady. The kind of voice that didn't ask, it expected. The man blocking her door finally looked at her. Really looked. His smirk didn't fade, but something flickered behind his eyes. Confusion, maybe. Or curiosity. Can you move, please? Sarah asked again. Polite. Patient. But firm. Why? One of them shot back, grinning. You in a hurry? Another laughed. What's the problem, lady? You park in our spot? She didn't respond. Not yet. Around them, the parking lot had started to fill in the gaps, a few shoppers pausing near their own cars, pretending not to watch but watching anyway. A couple stood by the cart return, frozen mid-conversation. A woman with a child glanced over, concern creasing her face. But no one moved. Sarah's cane tapped again. Once. Twice. The sound echoed across the wet pavement like a drumbeat. Her eyes never left theirs. I'm asking nicely, she said, quieter now. Move. One of them snorted. Or what? He gestured toward her cane, his grin widening. You gonna hit us with that? The others laughed. But the sound was thinner now. Hollower. Because something had shifted in the air. Something they couldn't name but could feel. Sarah didn't flinch. Didn't blink. She just stood there, weight balanced on her good leg, cane steady in her hand, and waited. And then, one of them glanced through her windshield. It was barely visible in the dim light, a small object resting on the dashboard, half hidden in shadow. But the street lamp overhead caught it just right, and for a split second, it gleamed. Gold. Star-shaped. Unmistakable. The silver star. The man's face went slack. His eyes widened. He straightened, stepping back instinctively, like he'd just touched something hot. The others noticed. Their laughter died mid-breath, replaced by a silence so sharp it felt like the world had stopped spinning. One by one, they looked. And one by one, they understood. This wasn't just some woman. This was a hero, someone who'd stood on the front lines, who'd bled for her country, who'd earned a medal most soldiers never even see. And these three kids in a grocery store parking lot, had mocked her. Blocked her. Disrespected her. The weight of it hit them like a freight train. Sarah didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The medal said everything. It was a quiet monument to sacrifice, to courage, to a life lived in service of something bigger than herself. And standing there in the rain, damp and weary, she didn't need to prove anything. The proof was already there, glinting under the dashboard light like a silent accusation. The man who'd been leaning on her car stepped aside. Then the second. Then the third. Their faces had gone pale, mouths pressed into tight lines. One of them, the one who'd mocked her cane, mumbled something under his breath. It might have been sorry. It was hard to tell. But Sarah heard it. She didn't gloat. Didn't lecture. Didn't even look at them as she unlocked her car and eased herself into the driver's seat. Her movements were slow, deliberate, every motion a reminder of the price she'd paid. But there was no bitterness in her eyes. No anger. Just quiet dignity. The door closed with a soft click. The engine turned over. And as she pulled out of the spot, headlights sweeping across the wet pavement, the three men stood in silence, watching her go. Inside her mind, the memories played like an old film. The faces of her squad. The weight of her gear. The moment the world exploded around her. The metal on the dashboard wasn't just a piece of metal, it was a reminder. Of the battles she'd fought. The friends she'd lost. The woman she'd become. Respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn. In the hardest places. In the darkest moments. And Sarah had earned it 1,000 times over. Her taillights disappeared into the night, swallowed by the rain and the dark. The parking lot returned to its quiet rhythm, cars coming and going, shoppers loading groceries, life moving forward like it always does. But somewhere out there, Sarah's story echoed. Not just hers, but the stories of countless others. Veterans who came home changed. Women who served in silence. Warriors who fought battles no one saw and carried scars no one acknowledged. They walk among us. In grocery stores. In coffee shops. On quiet streets. And too often, they're overlooked. Underestimated. Forgotten. But they're still standing. Sarah's story is a reminder, honor isn't about who looks the strongest. It's about who refuses to break, no matter how heavy the weight. It's about the quiet courage to keep going when the world has already moved on. And tonight, in a rain-soaked parking lot, 3 young men learned that lesson the hard way. So here's the question, would you have stepped in? Would you have spoken up? Or would you have stood by, pretending not to see? Think about the veterans in your life. The ones who served. The ones who sacrificed. The ones who came home different and never asked for thanks. Honor them. Respect them. Remember them. And if this story moved you, if it made you think, made you feel, then share it. Comment below. Let's keep these stories alive. Because every veteran deserves to be seen. To be heard. To be honored. Not just on holidays. Not just in parades. But every single day.